When you care about nature, it can be easy to become disheartened. It feels like right now the world is on fire. Species are disappearing at an alarming rate, and many are increasingly feeling powerless in the face of it all. I would argue that one of the biggest threats to environmentalism and conservation efforts is a slide into nihilism and hopelessness. But are things really hopeless? Can we really win against the odds that seem stacked against us? Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Tufnell, an environmental scientist. This is the first of a planned series of videos on reasons to be hopeful, because I feel that success stories are often buried under the constant stream of anxiety-inducing news stories. In this video, I'll be talking about 4 species of European animals that are fighting their way off the endangered list. I keep telling you that success is possible if we work together. Now let's look at some ways that success can manifest. The Iberian lynx are beautiful felines. They are heavily spotted, have distinctive black tufts of fur at the tips of their ears, long legs, and a very short tail with a black tip. Adults weigh between 10 and 13 kilograms, that's 22 to 29 pounds. They feed primarily on wild rabbits. An adult lynx needs about 1 rabbit a day, but a mother raising kits could need 3. Lynx may also eat ducks, young deer, and partridges. And boy, have they faced some serious threats to their existence. In 2001, they numbered only 62 mature individuals. But how did their situation get so dire? In the early 19th century, there were thousands of Iberian lynx, with a range that included Spain, Portugal, and southern France. Fossil records suggest that they've been here since the early Pleistocene, which was around 1 million years ago, and that their range was once even greater, stretching all the way to Italy. And then we happened. Our impact on their numbers was both direct and indirect. Indirect effects included habitat destruction and fragmentation, which not only reduced their possible territory, but made it difficult for them to find mates. This habitat destruction, changes in land use, and disease heavily impacted their main prey, the European rabbits. Myxomatosis, a virus which is mild in its original hosts in South America, is particularly deadly to European rabbits, and it was deliberately introduced in France in 1952 in order to control the rabbit population, which it did, spreading across continental Europe and into the UK, and had devastating effects on those rabbit populations, which meant less food for lynx. Lynx are also at risk from disease, both natural and those transmitted by livestock, and as their populations fell, the lower genetic diversity made them more vulnerable to disease. And on top of those indirect effects, humans hunted lynx for their pelts, poisoned or trapped them to protect livestock, and sadly lynx were often casualties on roads. With all this against them, the poor Iberian lynx seemed doomed, and yet the Red List of Threatened Species recently updated their status from endangered to vulnerable, with populations increasing from 62 mature individuals in 2001 to 648 in 2022. Today, their total population is estimated to be over 2,000. If conservation efforts continue to be effective, it's estimated that there is sufficient habitat for their species to have reached full recovery status in around 100 years. There's still much to do, but incredibly promising nonetheless. How was this achieved, though? Well, conservation efforts examined each threat to the lynx and found ways to tackle it. Since habitat loss was a major threat, efforts have focused on preserving their natural habitat, restoration of Mediterranean scrub and forest habitats, and creating ecological corridors between those patches of habitat so that the lynx could spread more easily and find mates. This also helped the local ecosystems, and other species, including their prey, benefited. The protection of the European rabbit also helped. Breeding programs and translocations of lynx have expanded genetic diversity, which has given the species greater resilience to disease. Threats still remain, of course, so conservation efforts must remain ongoing, but success so far has been incredible, and is very much reason to hope for the future. The Eurasian beaver. When I worked at a research centre in Germany, one of my favourite pastimes was checking on what the on-site beavers had been up to overnight. They would often gnaw trees. The next day, estates would fell the trees for safety reasons, and overnight the beavers would make off with them for their own usage. I do not know whether the beavers had learned how estates would respond and were using them to fell trees for them, or whether they were just opportunistic. But either way, really cool to see. And while I never got the joy of seeing beavers in person there, I did feel lucky to be able to share their space, because the Eurasian beaver has had some serious threats to its existence. Just a quick note, there are 2 species of beaver in the world. The Eurasian beaver, which is the focus of this video, and the North American beaver, which is also cool and displays very similar behaviours, but is not the star of today's video. Sorry, North American beavers, another time. But when I say beaver in this video, I'm referring specifically to the Eurasian beaver. These creatures were once very abundant throughout Europe and into Asia. but due to overhunting for their pelts and the use of castoreum in perfumery and food, they experience massive population decline. Oh, if you're wondering what castoreum is, well, it's a substance beavers use to mark their territories and is secreted from castor sacs near the anus. Yes, this was once used in food and perfume. Still is in some places, though artificial versions are now available. Sidetrack over, back to the beaver's decline. They are thought to have become extinct in Britain by roughly the 16th century, though may have persisted in some areas for longer. Fortunately, elsewhere in Europe, small populations of beavers survived, and from this, conservation and rewilding efforts have made incredible strides in improving their numbers. Estimates vary, but the Wildlife Comeback Report of 2022 estimated that between 1960 and 2019, Eurasian beaver populations had increased by a whopping 16,705%. They are now present in upwards of 29 European countries, either by deliberate reintroduction or by natural spread of beaver populations. In Italy, for example, beavers seem to have naturally crossed the Austrian border, following official reintroduction efforts there, but have also seen unofficial releases in other parts of the country. In the UK, all introduction of beavers were by humans, though these releases were not always official. The first licensed reintroduction happened in Scotland between 2009 and 2014, and was the subject of numerous scientific studies on both the ecological and social impacts of the reintroduction. This reintroduction was deemed a success, and the beavers were permitted to remain. Then, some years later, a population of wild beavers was discovered in the River Otter. Yes, this is the name of a river, it's in Devon. Which prompted the UK government to authorise the Beaver trial. Yes, I'm currently picturing beaver lawyers arguing their case in court. But no, this was also a study into the impact of beavers on both the ecology and community. Once again, the beavers passed this scientific scrutiny, and the beavers were again allowed to stay in 2020, and were awarded European Protected Species status in England in 2022. If you're wondering how beavers turned up in Devon, this is believed to be the result of beaver bombing, where rogue conservationists secretly released beavers. This is not ideal, as reintroduction efforts really do need to be carefully managed to ensure the well-being of the animals and protect local ecosystems. But this time, at least, it seems to have been a success and had a positive outcome. As of February 2025, the UK government has allowed Natural England to begin to accept wild release licences for beavers in England. And a damn fine thing too. Beavers act as ecosystem engineers and have an incredible effect on their environment. This includes hydrological connectivity and extending the biodiversity-rich wetland areas they live in. Through the building of dams, digging of canals and burrows, and felling of trees, beavers physically restructure the landscape, and their presence has been shown to have an overwhelmingly positive impact on both the diversity and abundance of freshwater species. There is also growing evidence that beavers are turning rivers into efficient carbon sinks, with wetlands graced by their presence able to store up to 10 times more carbon than similar but beaverless waterlands. The European bison, or viscent, I think I'm pronouncing that okay, but I found 3 or 4 different pronunciations of the words, I cannot be certain. These differ from their American counterpart in a number of ways. European bison are generally a little taller than American bison, but are on average lighter, though fully grown bulls have been known to hit over 850 kilograms. That's 1,874 pounds. American bison's horns tend to curve up and outwards. The horns of European bison, however, point forward. Compared to American bison, European bison tend to hold their heads higher, have less hairy bodies, and noses further out relative to their forehead. They also have different preferred habitats, with European bisons preferring forests and woodlands, while the American bison famously inhabited the plains and open grasslands. The viscent once roamed much of Europe, but, well, it also had tasty meat and impressive horns and thick hide, so humans being humans hunted it extensively. Firearms made this particularly deadly, and the last wild viscent was shot in the Caucasus in 1927. Fortunately, there was a small number, 54, still alive in captivity, and from this small number the species could be rebuilt. Though progress was slow, thanks to breeding and rewilding programs, the viscent inched its way back from extinction. The first release into the wild took place in 1954, and even today the largest herds can still be seen in Poland and now Belarus. There are also free-roaming herds in Romania and Bulgaria, where the animal has not roamed free since the Middle Ages. From 1960 to 2019, there was a 16,626% increase in the viscent population. By 2021, there were upwards of 7,000 free-roaming individuals. In 2020, the viscent was updated in the red list of threatened species from vulnerable to near threatened. In addition to breeding and rewilding programs, some of the ways this success was possible include preserving and restoring their habitat and improving public awareness and engagement on conservation, particularly by working to reduce the damage from bison on forests or crops. Another tactic was bridging habitats, creating habitat corridors and establishing new herds in between existing ones, allowing genetic diversity to flow between populations. While visons still face threats from poaching, lack of genetic diversity, limited habitat space and disease, if conservation efforts continue, their future should look bright. Which is excellent news on a number of fronts, as it has a number of beneficial effects on the landscape and biodiversity. The European bison is not native to the UK, but a now extinct variety of bison was. And as the species is now gone, its closest living relative, the visont, is now being reintroduced to the UK, with the first reintroduction happening in 2020 in Kent. The visont is expected to act as a surrogate species for the extinct bison. As a keystone species, the visont creates a mosaic of habitats. Through trampling, grazing, debarking and wallowing, the visont creates open areas of forests and allows grasslands to thrive. They disperse seeds which stick to their fur, all of which means the visont create and help maintain a connected set of habitats from woodland to grassland, which allow a variety of species to thrive. In the Netherlands, bison hair, which they leave on branches as they shed, has become a favourite nesting material for songbirds, which seems to have had a positive effect on songbird breeding. And bison may also play a role in carbon capture and storage. As they evenly graze grasslands, they recycle nutrients by fertilising the soil and compacting the soil, which prevents carbon from being released. When visont were removed from the ecosystem, this upset a delicate balance and caused carbon to be released. Now they're back, this can be reversed, possibly storing the equivalent carbon emissions of between 43,000 and 84,000 petrol cars every year. So the return of the visont is fantastic news, not just for the visont themselves, but for the ecosystem and the planet. The grey seal. Returning to the water, we now need to celebrate the resurgence of the grey seal. These are the largest of the seals found in the UK and can be distinguished from the common seal by its longer head and sloping nose, which, when seen straight on, has parallel nostrils rather than the V-shaped nostrils seen in common seals. They're largely grey in colour, with darker blotches and spots, which are unique to individuals and can be used when humans try to distinguish between them. Their numbers dropped in the 20th century to only about 500 individuals due to extensive hunting and culling of the species. However, in the UK today, there are more than 120,000 grey seals. We now have 95% of the European population and about 40% of the world's population. This is thanks largely to a number of legal protections put in place, such as the Conservation of Seals Act 1970, which prohibited killing seals and set down protections for the animals and their habitats. Various wildlife rescue organisations have worked hard to protect seals, and techniques for rescuing and rehabilitating injured seals have been developed over the years. Grey seals are intelligent and adaptable creatures, and have been able to change foraging habits or their preferred prey in order to adapt to changing conditions. However, they are slow to reproduce and face threats from disease, climate change and overfishing, getting caught in nets, etc. That said, their recovery should still be seen as a great success and should give hope that proper protection of species can achieve significant results. Conclusion. So I hope you enjoyed this video on European animals that have made comebacks from the brink of extinction. If there are species or regions you'd like to see me make videos on, please do let me know in the comments. There are many species I'd love to cover, so deciding which to do next is tricky and I'd value your input. I also hope this video has given you a reason to hope for a better future, and perhaps inspired you to get involved with a conservation organisation, to work towards creating more success stories and averting tragic extinctions. As always, I've left a library of links in the description if you'd like to check them out. So until next time, thank you for watching.